Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Yep, it's the world's most dangerous morning show, The Breakfast Club. Charlamagne the God, Angela Yee. We have the newest member of the iHeart Mafia. Vlad TV, DJ Vlad is here. What's up, Vlad?
What up, Charlamagne? My first time on the Breakfast Club in some years now, 3 or 4 years, I think.
Yeah, man. It's been quite a while. I saw you did a No Jumper interview.
I did.
And I saw you talking I didn't know you and Charlamagne had issues for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I talked about it on the No Jumper podcast, but me and Charlamagne got on the phone before that, and we had a long conversation, and we worked it out like grown men.
Yeah, I mean, the way Vlad explained it on No Jumper was pretty accurate. It's like me and Vlad have known each other for a long time. Like Vlad put me on, he used to do the Beef DVDs back in the day. You actually put me on there twice. You put me on there with Buffy the Body, and you put me on there with Chingy later on when I got on with Wendy. But prior to that, when I was in Columbia, South Carolina, you put me on with Buffy, and that was like big because that was like national exposure coming from Columbia, South Carolina. So me and Vlad have always communicated since then. And like Vlad said, like I've been to his crib. He's a Cancer like me, so we've celebrated born days together. And so when I did the Joe Budden podcast, I didn't know that Joe had such an issue with Vlad. So when Vlad came up and he kind of just asked me, like, why haven't you done Vlad in a while? And I was like, I said, I haven't been feeling some of Vlad's content. And that wasn't like the diss Vlad or throw Vlad under the bus. This was the first time somebody had asked me that in a public setting, and I was speaking freely. But like I told Vlad, man, the reason I felt like I was wrong because Vlad is my guy. So that was a conversation that we should have, and I think we did have that conversation with each other prior. But that shouldn't have been a conversation that I should have probably expressed publicly right there, especially with somebody who actually has an issue with Vlad.
Yeah. Well, me and you never really spoke about any issues that you had with me prior. I found out for the first time when you did that podcast. That was kind of why I felt, hurt at that time. Mm-hmm. And, me and you had a conversation afterwards. And after that, we just stopped speaking for about 2 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
Yeah, but I told Vlad I was wrong, and I apologize for that because if you my man, what I'm saying, I don't like to do things like that. Not if you my man like that. Like that should, like I said, that should have been a conversation me and Vlad had prior before he heard that on a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and we got on the phone a few months ago, and we had a conversation, and I think both of us, kind of sincerely apologized for some of the things that we said and about each other and did at that point. And I think that was really the whole thing. Is like neither one of us try to kind of jump away from our responsibility and say, well, I'm sorry you took it that way or whatever else. It was like, yo, I'm sorry, and we got to build again. And like I said, like you had been my friend for like 15 years or something like that, like some really, really long amount of time. So, I miss that friendship, and, I miss our conversations and communications and stuff like that. So at the point that we got on the phone a few months ago, I think it was dope. And ever since then, we've kept in contact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. I'm glad y'all squashed it. Because Vlad, let me tell you something. I see you've been doing your press run and everything, and we got so much to talk to you about today, but you get a lot of reactions when you talk about things. There's people who, love to come and do an interview on Vlad TV, and then there's people who think Vlad TV is an issue. So I think it's hard to have it just one way, right? As things get more popular and you get a lot of views, there's always going to be people who have issues. And I saw when you sat down with Benny the Butcher, he asked you about you asking people questions and situations where they might have some type of criminal case or whatever, and people have been like, oh, Vlad is the feds. And I saw what your response was to that when Benny the Butcher asked. So if you could just elaborate on that.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, what I do is I document history. Like the job that I do on Vlad TV is really designed to be appreciated long after I pass, for future generations. I think that if you look at the body of work and the probably over the 1,000 interviews that I did, and a lot of those interviews are about biopic, documentary type interviews where I tell a person's life story. Uh, that's really kind of the main goal behind Vlad TV. And when it comes to a person's background, if a person has, a criminal background, if they talk about it in their music, they talk about it in other interviews and so forth, we're going to ask them. Just like if you sit down with 60 Minutes or 2020 or Oprah or whatever else, you're going to get the real story, and we're going to ask the real questions. Uh, I'm very careful about the type of questions that I ask, in terms of, I never ask what a person's currently doing. I don't ask about current criminal activities. I'm very careful about statute of limitations and so forth. I'm not aware of anyone that's been hurt by our interviews. There's a lot of rumors that float around that, like, I think there was like this fake meme that floated around that the judge personally, like the judge in A.R. Ab's case, personally thanked Vlad for the conviction, which is just it's not even true. Like, I actually went through the transcripts. There's nothing of that sort. But, rumors like that start to circulate and so forth. But at the end of the day, we ask questions that people have already covered in their music, they've already covered in other interviews, and so forth. And it's really up to them whether they want to answer it or not. But that is really part of that person's story. So we're going to try to explore that person's story to the best of our ability.
I'm glad you said that, though, because, it is people who think law enforcement actually uses your videos to build cases against people. Have they ever contacted you and said, hey, could you send that video over, send that audio over?
We had one situation with someone that we interviewed. There was an interview we did, and then the person hit me up the next day and asked me to take it down. And I did. And I remember at one point, that person did get into some trouble, and they tried to contact me to try to get the video up and to try to get a copy of the video, and we refused.
Wow.
And they threatened to put me on the stand and everything else like that. And I'm like, okay, go ahead. So I lawyered up myself, and I spent about $10,000 to fight the Justice Department and a subpoena and so forth. And ultimately, they didn't get the footage. And I mean, the person who I'm even talking about doesn't even know the story, and I'm not going to put the person's name out there. But yeah, we actually fight law enforcement to protect the rights of the people that we interview.
Wow. Would you consider yourself an investigative journalist? What would Vlad TV call himself?
Yeah, I think investigative journalism is probably the right word for it. I'll take that.
Now, you and Charlamagne squash things. You think, I saw Joe Budden responded to your interview also. You think you guys could ever mend things? I was looking back at when I was at Shade 45 and Joe Budden was on, and I had you call in. I remember you were like, why'd you do that to me?
Yeah, I remember that conversation. That was I think the only time since my interview with Joe Budden like 12 years ago that me and him have actually spoken with each other publicly. Well, like I said when I did No Jumper, that I don't really have any issues with him. It's very one-sided. Like, I actually had an issue with Crooked Eye at one point, based on some footage that we put up, and Royce the 5'9" got us both on the phone. We had a conversation and we worked it out, and we're friends these days. Like, we talk on a regular basis, we have lunch together and so forth. And I actually, through academics, I said, hey, if you want to pass a message along to Joe, let him know that I apologize for some of the things that I've said over the years and some of the posts that I've done. And I'm willing to have a conversation with him. And, the response I got from academics was Joe doesn't want to talk to you, and keep that same energy when you see him. So, based on what I saw with Joe's response, he doesn't want to work it out, and that's fine. You don't have to work it out with everyone. You don't have to be friends with everyone. People have their own points of view, and people have their own careers. And like Joe said on his podcast, we're both in our 40s. We're both rich. There's no reason why we need to work together or work things out or whatever else. He's got his lane. I have my lane. He wished me the best in my business. I wish him the best in his business. We both do well, and we don't have to cross paths or intersect or work together or whatever else to do well.
Yeah, y'all crossed paths at the Script Club. He said he didn't realize that was you, though.
You did lose some weight, Vlad. You look like you slimmed down, and you have your beard popping.
Yeah. Well, we didn't actually, like the story got a little changed on his podcast, and it made it sound like I ran him out of the club or something like that, and that's just not the case. We were actually standing outside of the strip club, me and my man Omar, and the door opened, and he walked right past us. And then he went to his car, and he was in his car for like 15 or 20 minutes. I don't know whether he saw me, whether he recognized me, or whatever else. I would just think on a basic level, though, because Joe did, on his podcast multiple times, he said that when I see Vlad, I'm going to put hands on him as soon as I see him. Like, he said this multiple times. So in our eyes, we're preparing for that. We're taking that seriously. I don't know whether he was joking or not, but we're taking it seriously. So it's like, when we go out, we understand that if we run into this guy, whether it's by himself or with other people, there might be violence immediately. And that violence might turn fatal, because you never know how these types of situations turn out. So we prepare ourselves. We saw him. It was like, okay, we're prepared for something bad to happen. I'm not going to be the aggressor, but I've never been the aggressor in these types of situations. I'm not going to go and try to attack somebody or whatever else, especially when there's cameras around and so forth. So I don't know whether he saw me. I don't know whether he didn't. And I would think, though, just on a basic safety level, if you're out there threatening somebody over and over again, and that person floats around your city, you would think that you would keep tabs on what that person looks like, just for that person's personal safety. But it's really, the story is the story.
And Vlad, me and you have been in similar situations. Just for the content that we put out, people don't agree with it. They wanted to put hands on us. You know what I'm saying? Everybody know my Can I Get a Drop situation. Everybody know about you and Raw. So I'm sure that you take extra precautions because that has happened to you before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I go out, I always have security, sometimes armed, sometimes unarmed. But personal protection is always key when it comes to these types of people, types of situations. And if you're out there giving your opinion and rubbing people the wrong way, you should be prepared for repercussions of that. Not to say that you shouldn't do it. You should give your opinion if that's what your platform is, but you should understand that opinion is going to affect other people, and be prepared for it.
The Vlad TV platform is different, though, because it's not like you up there giving your opinion. You up there interviewing other people, and they're giving their opinions on things. So I don't know if you should be taking the heat for things that come out of other people's mouths.
Well, at the end of the day, I put it out, so it's under my umbrella, and it's got my name on it, and I have to stand behind it. I mean, I do. It's not like an interview is just that person's talking, and you never hear my voice or my opinion. So I give my opinion sometimes. I try to let the person talk most of the time, but I put in my 2 cents, and people know where I stand on certain issues. But regardless of what it is, people will blame the platform for the content, regardless of who's actually speaking on the platform. And I'm sure you guys have gotten similar type of criticisms over the years.
All the time. People get mad at you for asking a question sometimes. They be like, I can't believe that you asked that. Even most recently with August Alsina, they're mad that I asked a question that people were asking online forever. So
yeah, I mean, that's how it goes. And and this is what you sign up for. I mean, so you're either going to be scared and shut your business down, or you're going to keep going and take the proper precautions.
Has anybody ever tried to shut your business down?
I mean, shut my business down?
Yeah, like how you said they try to shut it down, your band.
I don't know if that's even really possible. I mean, it's a business that I own. I own all the content. I own all the production behind it. The distribution is done through YouTube, Facebook, my website, and now iHeart, the various streaming podcasts. So shutting it down is sort of a weird type of question. I don't work for anybody. I'm not employed by anybody.
But even like with cancel culture, where people try to cancel people.
Yeah, I mean, you could try to cancel who you're going to cancel, but unless you put that person in prison like a Harvey Weinstein or a Bill Cosby, you're not really canceling anything.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have that Nick Cannon interview lined up? I know you interview Nick Cannon quite frequently. You got
Nick just interviewed you, right?
Yeah, I mean, we interview each other. We're also friends. We've had hours-long conversations, both on and off camera. And when it comes to his current situation, I really don't want to give my opinion until me and him speak on the phone. We were actually playing phone tag yesterday to try to talk to each other, and we just weren't able to connect. But until me and him really have a serious conversation, I'm just going to keep my opinions about what happened to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do want to say, Vlad, you're Russian and Jewish, right?
Correct.
You've interviewed Professor Griff. I've never watched the interview, so I don't know what the context was. I just know that you did interview Professor Griff. As a Jewish person,
yeah,
you know, how did you feel about the things he was saying?
I've interviewed Professor Griff. I've interviewed Wesley Muhammad from the Nation of Islam.
Yep.
I've interviewed Nuri Muhammad from the Nation of Islam. I use the Fruit of Islam for my security sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of respect for the nation overall in terms of what they've done for Black people in this country, and how they turn people's lives around. And the people that I've met are very, are very upstanding people. But back to the original question, yeah, I did interview Griff, and I asked him about the comments that he made about Jewish people, and he kind of explained it overall, and he kind of explained that it was part of a bigger interview, and he explained some of the things that he said and some of his justification for it, and this was things that he said many years ago, and people evolve, and people change their opinion, and people get new information, and they absorb that information, and they start to change their their viewpoint. Anyone, I've said this before, like, for example, at one point I said that I support reparations for African Americans, possibly in the form of a free college education. And a lot of people got on me for that, because my justification for that was that I didn't think that the U.S. was going to cut a massive check to Black people.
Mm-hmm.
And then coronavirus happened. And then suddenly the U.S. is cutting massive checks. So I had to circle back and say, I'm changing my stance. I actually do believe in cash reparations for African Americans based on this new information. And I would rather say that I was wrong than to say that I don't evolve.
Absolutely.
And I think that's sort of the important thing, is that you may think a certain type of way, but you get new information and you evolve. So when you get these types of situations like a Nick Cannon or a Professor Griff, I think that it's an opportunity to teach the person, well, not to teach the person, but for the person to kind of learn certain things. You got to understand that me as a Jewish person, being a Russian Jew, 9 of my aunts and uncles were murdered by Nazis.
Wow.
And I've never said this before on camera. 9 of my aunts and uncles. So think about, this happened 80 years ago, something like that. I mean, the 40s, right? Yeah, 50, yeah, 70 something years ago. I don't have probably about 40 people in my family because of what Hitler did.
Wow.
All those aunts and uncles would have had children. Those children would have had children. I would have all these cousins. And I think about all the family members that I could have been close to, that could have helped me, that I could have helped. All the relationships that are lost because of something that Hitler did. And this is why, for example, when Deshaun Jackson said what he said when he started quoting Hitler, I said, fuck Deshaun Jackson on Twitter. Point blank, because of that. But then Deshaun went back and apologized for the comments he said. He's actually and he said that he's gonna visit Auschwitz, one of the main concentration camps. And what you have to understand is that as a Jewish person, I grew up learning about Hitler and the concentration camps and 6 million Jews being killed and everything else like that. But other people don't grow up with that same type of history. They hear about it and so forth, but they haven't internalized it and heard it every day almost since birth the way that I have, because my own family was murdered. Parts of my family were murdered. If you're detached from that and you don't learn that history, you may not look at Hitler the same thing. You just hear the word, but you don't hear it. So once again, like with the Deshaun Jackson thing, it's like, all right, he said what he said, but then he got more information and he evolved. And I think that's the important part.
Right.
The crazy thing is that wasn't even a real Hitler quote, but I mean, you're never going to win. You're never going to even get off to a good footing in whatever you're trying to convey by saying Hitler said. That's
right.
And
let me just make a very strong point. and you could go ahead and Google this, the people that's watching, Hitler hated black people the same way he hated Jews.
Yeah.
Black people were killed in Germany in the same way. Hitler was trying to create a master race. Okay. Supporting Hitler is like supporting the Ku Klux Klan. It's the same ideology. Okay. So to think that Hitler was somehow fighting for black Americans,
No.
Like that's why he was doing it, to help black Americans. Like, no, that's not what was happening. Had Hitler won World War II and spread into America, best believe the black people would be in the gas chambers right along with Jews. Guaranteed. Probably along with Asian people and Indian people and Spanish people and so forth.
Anybody without blonde hair, blue eyes,
anybody without blonde hair and blue eyes would end up in those same death chambers. So that's what got me kind of upset over that.
Right.
Yeah, and also too, man, I think that if you're going to even attempt to have those discussions, have it with a rabbi, have it with a Jewish scholar, have it with someone who can correct you if you say something inaccurate, correct you if you say something anti-Semitic. Like this, I don't see the benefit of two black people having that conversation, just like I don't see the benefit of two white people having a conversation about black issues. I can't tell you what's not anti-Semitic, same way you can't tell me as a black person what's considered racist.
Yeah, I can't tell you what it's like to be a black man in America. It doesn't matter how many black friends I have. It just does not matter. I don't know what it's like to have a cop behind me for no reason and wondering if I'm going to lose my life when I get pulled over. I've never gone through that. I've never had police pull guns on me. I've never gotten beaten up by the police. I've gotten roughed up by the police, but never actually beaten up and bruised and bloodied. So I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend like I know what other people are going through, because I don't.
Vlad, I want to talk to you about the iHeart thing. Like how is the podcast going to differ from the website online content?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of similarities to it, but a lot of people have been asking for audio versions of our interviews for a very long time. And, we finally have a chance to give it to them. So a lot of the content is going to be the same, but there is going to be situations where we premiere certain things on the podcast. So for example, we just did an interview with Daniel Green, who was one of the two people convicted of killing Michael Jordan's father. So, that was a prison interview. He's actually doing life in prison. So that interview actually premiered last week on iHeart, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeart app. So that premiered on there first, and then later on, a few days later, then you saw the clips on YouTube and so forth. So it is going to be similar content, but I'm a little bit new in the podcast space. I'm still kind of learning. Like I had a big conference call with iHeart yesterday. What they told me, which was actually kind of surprising, is that the biggest genre on podcasts is true crime.
Yeah,
right.
That actually eclipses all the music stuff and everything else like that. I had no idea. Like I literally didn't, but they're like, this is what keeps the lights on, like these true crime podcasts. And I'm like, well, that's kind of long my alley. Like I do that anyway. So it's going to be one of those things where, over time, this is just another platform for us. And we're going to figure out what works on this platform, what works on, that may not work on other ones. Like YouTube has always been our biggest platform. Like we do about 75 million views a month on YouTube. But in the last 6 months, Facebook video has become a major platform as well.
Yeah.
Like we do 50 million views on Facebook a month, on Facebook video. But Facebook video is a little different than YouTube video. Certain things work, certain things don't. So it's just a matter of expanding our business and using the content that we build on and putting it on different platforms.
What has been the biggest Vlad TV interview to date?
The biggest,
with the most views.
The most views, Boosie's usually at the top of the list most times. Boosie is one of our most viewed interviews, but there was the interview with Keefe D. That was the uncle of Orlando Anderson, the one who killed Tupac, and it was a first-hand account of the murder of Tupac, and he was actually in the car in Vegas that shot up Tupac's car. So hearing that story from the other side, I think was just extremely important in the Tupac story, because this is a case that's still unsolved 30 something years later, or 20, 25 years later. That was one of our biggest ones, but there's been a lot. You know, we're constantly putting out stuff that kind of breaks previous records. But I would say, like, you know, the regular Boosie interviews, the Keefy D interviews, yeah, probably those two.
People were upset about the Daniel Green interview. They were like, why interview the man who said he killed, well, was accused of killing Michael Jordan's father? Why? So why?
Well, I mean, whenever we put out an interview about somebody getting killed, that's always the first thing. But if you look at journalism and media in general, murderers have always been interviewed. And at the end of the day, like I said in the beginning of this interview, I'm here to, you know, to document history. And this is not designed for necessarily right now. Michael Jordan is still considered the greatest basketball player of all time. The murder of his father was heavily covered in The Last Dance. That was a big part of that documentary, which became ESPN's biggest documentary ever in their 40-year history. And with that story being so important, and with the conspiracy theories about that story being big, because even if you watch The Last Dance, the first thing that happened was, oh, Michael Jordan's father got killed because of his gambling debts. Michael Jordan's father got killed by the mafia. I interviewed Michael Franzese, who was part of the Colombo crime family, who even said that he thinks that there was some sort of mafia connection. And I think it was really important to show that the greatest basketball player of all time, his father, was not killed because of his gambling or because of the mafia or because of the Illuminati or whatever else. It was killed by two 18-year-olds who lived in a trailer park in North Carolina who were involved in a robbery that turned into a murder. And these dudes were rookies. These were not professional criminals. They drove around in his dad's Lexus for a week. They made 40 phone calls from his car phone to their own friends and family. And then the guy I interviewed did a goddamn music video wearing Jordan's championship ring and watch.
No.
Yeah. I mean, this is why he's in prison for life. So does this sound like a professional hit? Does this sound like the mafia? You know, have you ever heard of a mafia member making a music video wearing the items of the person they killed?
No.
Like this is just two dumb 18-year-olds who got in over their heads and killed an innocent man, probably over his belongings. So that to me is there. And if you want to get mad at me and say, oh, well, how does family feel and so forth, you know, whenever somebody gets interviewed who's involved in a murder, people are going to get, you know, people are going to feel some type of way and people are going to be hurt and so forth. But Jordan is a historical figure, and this is now part of his story.
And Daniel always said he didn't do it.
Yeah, Daniel said that he didn't kill him. He said that he helped dispose of the body because that was his friend. But ultimately, he ended up with all the stuff from the robbery, like all the jewelry.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know. I mean, nobody really wants to be responsible for killing the father of the greatest basketball player of all time. And, you know, after The Last Dance started, they moved Daniel Green to cell number 23. You know,
No.
Michael
I gotta
Jordan's
catch
number.
up on the podcast. I wanted to listen last week. I'm gonna catch up when I'm in the gym today, though.
Yeah. So obviously you're not gonna admit to something like that. You know, hope springs eternal. He's hoping that he could somehow, you know, get free. And there's really only two witnesses, him and his co-defendant, Larry. And both of them said the other one was the shooter. And, you know, one of them took a plea deal, one of them went to court and blew trial. And both of them have very long prison sentences. I think Larry's actually up for parole, but Daniel isn't.
Is there any story in your career that you regret putting up?
I think that there's certain people that I interviewed that ultimately ended up being somewhat fraudish and ended up kind of taking advantage of people. And I feel that being on my platform and how big it is, it almost helped with the scamming in a certain type of way. And you know, I'm not going to put any names out there, but those are the type of interviews that I kind of regret. It's like, you know, when I find out more about that person's character after the fact, I kind of regret giving them a platform.
Do you also feel like people used to talk a lot more reckless earlier on when you started Vlad TV than they do now, and maybe regret some of the things they've said?
No, I think people are just as reckless in 2020 as they were in 2008. You know, I almost think people are more reckless because the platforms are so much bigger now, and you didn't really have people getting careers off of viral moments in 2008. You actually had to have a talent. You have to be an actor, or, you know, a singer or a rapper or a musician, or executive or something like that. These days you have a viral video. I mean, look at like Bad Baby, you know, the Catch Me Outside girl. She turned that viral moment into a full-fledged hip hop career.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
don't you think people are a lot more critical of what you have to say now? You know, with a lot of different things happening. And like I said, things are going viral and people are really holding you a lot more accountable, even with comedians.
hmm Yeah, I mean, I guess, but if you look at most comedians, they'll sit there and apologize, but they don't really mean it. You know, at the end of the day, they'll get back in the comedy club and say the same types of things. You know, cancel culture is an interesting thing in 2020, and some people have gotten canceled. You know, so some people ended up in prison. But if you don't end up in prison, how many people's careers have really gotten shut down completely? Especially when they create their own content and they own their own production of things. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, I never say things and expect for everybody to agree with me. Like, I know there's going to be backlash. The only thing I don't like is being taken out of context. Like, they love to use the Vlad TV video I did, where I talked about when I was 17 years old and I hit a woman, right? And I thought, I mean, you know, back then I would explain it differently than I would now. Back then it might have been a little bit more lighthearted, but even back then I was saying that shit was wrong. I was fucked up for that. And I talked about the karma that I experienced because of it. But they would just take a clip of it and throw that out there and be like, see, look, he hates women, he beats women.
Yeah, I think like recently one of the most disturbing things that I saw was me and Lord Jamar, who's a regular guest on the show. We did an interview a few years back about Black Lives Matter. And in that interview, Jamar said that he doesn't support Black Lives Matter because he doesn't feel it's Black people's movement. And recently, that video has gotten co-opted by a bunch of like right-wing groups as sort of propaganda against Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
And they even make it look like it's an interview that they did with Lord Jamar. They'll cut out the logo and only use a certain part and so forth. We've had a lot of those interviews taken down, you know, because like on Facebook it shows me like all the people that end up using the video. So we've gotten a lot of them taken down, but you know, one of them like InfoWars. What's the name of the guy that
Alex
does
Jones?
that? Yeah, I think Alex Jones was one of the ones that used it because it had like a logo of a company that he's associated with. So yeah, man, it's tough because they'll sit there and chop things up and make it look a certain type of way, and you don't really have full control once you put it out.
Right.
It is what it is.
Yeah, and when I do Vlad TV again, I want to do like a contrast to like my most problematic videos. Like I want you to ask me about some of those, you know,
Okay.
those videos.
That's
that,
like no problem. I got you.
Yeah, I'm with that. Now with iHeart, Vlad, why iHeart? Why now? Because I'm sure you people will coming after you in this audio game.
Yeah, iHeart just stepped up with the most support. A lot of people were willing to get my podcasts up on Spotify and so forth. I actually had a deal in the works already that I was about to sign with a different company, and then iHeart came in and they're like, "Yo, not only are we gonna get your stuff out there, but we're actually gonna put a major marketing push behind it. We're actually gonna keep pushing it until it's successful." And you know, and you and I spoke, and I talked about your experiences with iHeart, and you spoke, you know, very highly about them as well. So based on that, I'm like, all right, you know, I've never really had that before. You know, our thing has always been we put out our own content, we push it ourselves, we grow our audience, and we get it big. So to actually be in a situation where we have a big corporation like iHeart that's helping us out with that part, I think is dope. And that was the reason why I went with iHeart.
Word.
All right. Well, Vlad, stay safe and give our love to the family.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And looking forward to Charlamagne back on Vlad TV again. A lot of people have been asking over the years.
Nah, soon. Like I really want to do it like how we used to do it. So I mean, I think we could do it now though. Like I think we could do it now.
Yeah. Charlamagne back on Vlad TV, man. And you were actually my first, repeat guest.
Really?
You were, yeah, before Jamar and everyone else. Let's think about it, right? Me and you were doing interviews while you were still in Philly.
Yep.
You were still on the Philly station, because remember, you and I did the interview about how, when you lost that job.
Very prophetic. Now that you go back and look at it.
Yeah. Before you joined the Breakfast Club, you were doing regular interviews on Vlad TV.
Yep.
So yeah, man, I think it'd be dope. And at the end of the day, you and I had this conversation. You don't need Vlad TV for the Breakfast Club to be successful. I don't need Charlamagne for Vlad TV to be successful. We've both proven that, with us not doing anything together for a bunch of years. But it'd be dope. We do well together. When we do rock with each other, and when we put that content out, millions and millions of people watch it. So I think it'd be dope to like kind of bring that back and start on that again.
No, we're gonna do it soon. I got one more announcement I want to make before I come do it. We announced the Comedy Central show already, but I got one more announcement.
Congrats.
We'll come do it.
Congrats. And congrats on the Radio Hall of Fame thing as well.
Word.
That's big, man. That's really big. Congrats on that to both of you.
So check out the Vlad TV podcast on iHeart Podcast. And Vlad, we talk to you soon, my brother.
No doubt.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.